Hello, and welcome to The Nation. You're joining me, Elaine Nur Abdullah, as I discuss the topic of Budget 2022, Property and Finance for the M40 and B40 Group. Now, Budget 2022, tabled in Parliament recently, which carried the theme Keluarga Malaysia Makmur Sejahtera, or a prosperous Malaysian family, is the largest budget in Malaysia's history with an allocation of 332.1 billion ringgit. Now, in facing the global pandemic, most countries are forced to deal with two heavy challenges: saving lives as well as protecting the economy. However, the government remains positive that next year the country's economy will expand. Now, joining me to discuss this are two experts in their own field: Dr. Nur Ain Shahrier, Senior Lecturer at Sunway University, as well as Datuk Vincent Tiew. He is the property entrepreneur. Now, let's start with both of you. Hi, welcome to the show. It's so good to be able to speak to both of you on this topic.
Thank you so much,
Hi.
Elaine. Hi, Datuk.
Hi.
Hi, Elaine.
Yes.
Now, let's start with Dr. Nur. What are some of your highlights from the budget 2022 that you've observed? Any allocations, initiatives for the B40 and the M40 that have caught your eye? Perhaps you can highlight them to us.
Okay, so I guess that one of the highlights is the budget strategy one, that is the restoring lives and livelihood. As we anxiously listen to the government planning to restore back the economy post-pandemic, but now with the new variant of COVID-19 Omicron, so it seems like the recovery might take longer than expected. So under this strategy one, right, restoring lives and livelihood, we have initiative one, that is direct cash assistance and welfare, and we also have initiative four, which is generating and sustaining jobs, specifically upskilling and reskilling, and we have Jamin Kerja Keluarga. So one of the highlights here that I wanted to point out is that there's the upskilling and reskilling here, and Jamin Kerja Keluarga target the low-skilled workers that mostly come from their poor households. What type of job matching do we target to these B40 groups or the lower M40 groups? So under the initiative one, that is direct cash transfers, so we know that this is allocated to the B40 group. But what about initiative four? Do we have this Jamin Kerja Keluarga or this upskilling and reskilling that is targeting the B40 group as well? Because mostly the B40 groups, right, they lack of access to good quality education or healthcare. Well, let's not talk about like even quality itself, even the basic healthcare and education as alone, right? So when you lack of these essentials, most likely you are going to be in the low skilled category, and you will end up with low income job, and that perpetuates poverty. So it is good to have an initiative one, temporary direct cash transfer to buffer from the current shocks. But I believe the sustained solution for this group, the B40, lower income M40 groups, is an intervention that can lift them up from the poverty trap or poverty cycle that can last forever, or from one generation to another generation. So these are the two highlights that I wanted to point out here under the strategy one, initiative one and initiative four.
Right. So essentially, it's looking for what can literally lift up, not just a temporary assistance. Now, Dr. Vincent, over to you. Maybe you can give us an overview of the property market currently, especially as we come out of COVID-19 pandemic. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay. Well, literally speaking, I'm not sure we actually can say or term ourselves as we have already come out, or of course, possibly anticipating to come out from the COVID. But basically, the issue will be the property market itself in the last 1.5 years has been very tough for property developers, and basically the sales, I would say, is pretty stagnant, and I would say majority property developers were experiencing a slow take-up. All right. Then in the secondary market, there's a little bit of activities, to be exact, because there are some properties that are sold at more reasonable selling prices. So some owners, generally, based on transactions and records, you can see that they're more receptive to actually sell and ask for reasonable selling prices. Okay. Now, the property movements itself of the industry as we move along post-COVID, I'm looking at a very good take-up and a comeback development because of the interest rate. So interest rate is actually a very good component, a very good factor, important factor, because the current interest rate, the mortgage bank interest rate itself is pretty low. So that's actually one key thing that we have to take note. Secondly, very quickly, the developers has also been actually focusing a lot of their design on affordable homes. Yes, the state governments and federal government has been working on that, and the building, and also it's quite many cities and key prime areas are still very receptive, good demand. And I see that a lot of developers moving along the angle since the many years, and they continue to be in this zone itself. So overall property sector itself, I see post-COVID, to be exact, 2022, based on the market knowledge and the information of what we have gathered and talked to many people, a lot of developers are planning to now launch their balanced phases of developments. You can see why, that the scale model makers are all now very busy, or a lot of developers are preparing for the scale model. That's already a very good indication. That means they're preparing for launches. A lot of creative advertising agencies are already preparing a lot of visuals, a lot of posters, a lot of design, a lot of animations, And recently, if you start talking to some of the consultants from architects and all that, you realize that they're getting busier already, because they're already preparing for the launch. So I think the outlook is very positive for 2022, and that's my take, a very quick overview of the property.
That's great. Now, Datuk, I just want to continue the next question with you. The government has allocated 2 billion ringgit under the Housing Credit Guarantee Scheme, or what is called the HCGC. Now, this was, of course, to help those without proof of fixed income. How does this allocation help the B40 or M40 community specifically, and what can they do with it? Perhaps you can give us a quick overview in 2 minutes.
Yeah, so very quickly, actually the B40 definitely is the one that really impacted by this whole pandemic itself. But not forgetting M40 group itself, it's suffer equally because a lot of commitments that's already been committed, loans, etc. That we do have the moratorium, but that's not enough. So this particular incentives funds that's been located is actually very important, because it will give a surge and injection of the cash to the families, to the households. And basically the importance is actually where we want to be very effective in actually I call the distributions of this financial aid funds itself. The banks play a very important role to be able to roll out this very quickly itself. So if the government is moving forward, I would say that the banks will actually be able to play a very important role to quickly get this X billion itself, which actually has a chain effect for the country. Now, the survivability is the key thing. Whatever that the government is doing right now, to roll it out, it will not happen in 24 hours. It takes time, but it is very impactful. So what can this public and household, the B40, B20 and M40 enjoy? It's immediate relief, apart from the moratoriums that is offered by the bank, but which is ending soon. But this cash, actually, financial aid is very important. And the system of distribution is actually the key criteria here. The speed itself, you save the fire within 30 days, or you're going to wait for 3 months, or you have to wait for 9 months. Yeah, so that's actually the key thing.
Right, that's great. Now,
involved,
yeah, essentially what we're trying to do is quick relief in order for us to be able to kickstart and recover as soon as possible. Now, we'll take a short breather right now. When we come back, we have more questions with regards to what are some of the areas in Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after these messages. Hello and welcome back on The Nation. You're still with me, Nur Abdullah, as I discuss the topic of budget 2022, property and the finance sector for the M40 and B40 group. With me today are 2 very special guests. I'm speaking to Dr. Nur Ain Shahrier, Senior Lecturer at Sunway University, as well as Datuk Vincent Tiew, Property Entrepreneur. Hi both. Now, earlier we covered some basics of the budget 2022 and what are some of the goodies for those in the M40 and B40 sector to look out for. Dr. Nur, let's start with you. For the government has covered many areas in this budget 2022. As it trickles down, some say it doesn't seem like much, but there is a bigger picture to this, of course. Let's talk about Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia. Now, for households that earn less than 2,500 ringgit, they can receive between 1 to 2,000 ringgit, depending on the number of children that they have. And there are allocations for single parents and senior citizens as well. So how will this help the B40 community, and how can they use this bantuan to generate income, Doctor?
So yes, you correctly pointed out, Elaine, that Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia, depending on the number of children that you have in a family, so the different type of allocation will be given to you. So for example, if let's say you earn roughly about 2,500 and less, and you have more children, you'll get about 1,000 ringgit one-off. If let's say you have 3 children instead, so you'll get like 2,000 ringgit. So if you take this 2,000 ringgit, right, and you divide by 12 months, that is roughly about 167 ringgit per month. And 167 ringgit with the 5 people in your households, the father, the mother, and the 3 children, so that goes around roughly about $33 per person per month. So if you're asking whether with this amount of 2,000 that you're looking one-off short for 1 year, would it be enough for them to generate additional income? I think in my personal opinion, I don't think so. Even to cover the basic necessities in when there is emergencies or the essentials is very tight indeed. So let alone to have extra disposable income to generate another source of income. So when you do, that kind, when you look at it on per person basis, it is quite difficult to say that this amount can be used to generate more income. So plus, Elaine, now we are seeing the increase in the price of vegetables. So that really, inflation is the tax on our consumptions. So that really erodes the real purchasing power. Meaning to say, you're already getting less amount of money, and now you have to pay even more on your consumptions. So that would be my answer, Elaine. I don't think the allocation is sufficient to help them to generate additional income though.
So at this point of time, it's a temporary measure, a temporary relief to sort of tide over at a certain period of time. Now, Dr. Vincent, we are moving on to you for the next question. There have also been specific allocations for the housing sector as well. Now, with allocations for the housing sector, what must we look out for to make sure the money or allocation is used well? How can we use the allocations to our benefit? Perhaps you can expand on this a little bit.
Okay. Well, actually, it is quite related to HCGC question earlier, which is actually in the form of loan, and it is to be processed by the banks in order to help these two groups of the B20 M40 to be able to buy the properties. Now, so same thing. Basically, to implement all these initiatives itself, it's very important that I think this housing incentives itself, where possible, I feel it should be championed by the housing ministry, because the housing ministry has the federal power. Because every state is already having its own initiatives, whatever programs, Selangor, Rumah Selangorku, Perak, Johor, every state has its own programs to try to have their own initiated and their own fundings itself. So if you're talking about this federal government fund under the budget itself, I would say that it should be under the federal housing ministry, and the special team needs to be set up itself. Of course, under the federal government, there's many agencies that has been implementing all these housing initiatives and all that, from One Prima, SPNB, and etc. All that. But I feel that it should be actually a new task force, a new team altogether, that comprises of the private sector people that actually will be able to see this and drive this very quickly and reduce the bureaucracy of having to go to a whole series of the implementation. itself. But this is done together with the associations. For example, the housing developer, the association itself, talking about the registered, we have the professionals such as the architects, the engineering association itself, bring the key peoples of that resembles and represents the industry itself that come and implement it. So, but it should be championed under the housing ministry having their overall federal power and authority. So because we want to make sure that distribution is fair, the distribution is quick, and also the implementation of each of the projects itself really kicks off and happen. You see, when a little bit technically, all the ministry and agency now, if it's under holding a government itself, you will realize that some implementation is too slow and did not really get the effect where what the federal government wanted. So
I'd just like to interrupt you a little bit, though, so that we can quickly talk a little bit about the RPGT. We have about 2 minutes on this segment. The government has also abolished the real property gain tax, or RPGT. How will this benefit the M40 B40 group? You can quickly
this is a favorite topic. This is actually one of the best things that the federal government have done this year, this round.
Yes.
I personally am so happy with this. Honestly speaking, it's actually one key thing. Let's talk about the public, not just the people who already have a lot of properties. We're talking about what's the benefit of it, when you dispose of a property sub-sale, they're talking about to the secondary market, after 5 years. So it actually encourages to the existing property owners to dispose of and pay slightly lesser tax or no tax, for example, respectively, either it's under personal or the company. But the key thing is actually allows the group of the B20 and M40 to finally, easily, to be able to purchase, invest, and buy the properties that they are comfortable and they like from the secondary market itself easily. Because if the current, let's say the first-hand owners, the original owners are actually disposing in and benefiting from RPGT, they may not be too bothered and mind about the having to insist a very high selling price itself. So I guess it's actually two ways. One is actually existing property owners is actually a really big initiative, a good benefit. And of course, the existing public itself, which you may not have owned a property, but may not be eligible or have not got a chance to actually get all the affordable homes. So it's a good entry, quick entry. You can buy existing properties.
Fantastic. So there's really a boon in the removal of the RPGT, and I would encourage everybody who is able to take advantage of this waiver at this point of time. We'll take another short breather right now. When we come back, we have more questions, of course, on Budget 2022. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages. Hello, thanks for staying with me, Elaine Law on The Nation. We are discussing the topic of Budget 2022, Property and Finance for the M40 and B40 Group. In conversation with me are two guests, Dr. Nur Ain Shahrier, Senior Lecturer from Sunway University, as well as Datuk Vincent, Tiew, Property Entrepreneur. And we've covered quite a few topics earlier, Doctor as well as Datuk, and of course we had that really interesting sort of before we close on the last segment, the RPGT removal, which is going to be a boon for a lot of people who are in the sub-sale market. But now let's go to Dr. Nur. We have a question for you. Let's talk about the economic stimulus package. Now, other than allocating direct resource to help families survive, we also should look at the long-term structural changes. Now, in keeping up with the times, the government has provided a few initiatives for digitalization of SMEs and increasing connectivity. How can we capitalize on these digitalization initiatives to increase and sustain future income? Do you have some thoughts on this, Dr. Nur?
Yes, Elaine. It's true that one of the disruptions that we are seeing as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic is the digitalizations of businesses, right? So digitalizations meaning that we are using more of the digital technologies to change the business model. The way that the business operates now are more digitalized based. So micro entrepreneurs needs to be more agile, more flexible, adaptive, and they need to leverage on these government platforms. So even though, let's say, they are unable to, let's say, access these government platforms, government initiatives, maybe because of some stringent requirements and stuff like that, there are many digital courses out there for businesses available online. From Microsoft that is offering digital certifications, Google that is also offering the digital certifications. So you can get upskilling yourself in these digital technologies, not only by leveraging on the government initiatives, but also many available courses out there online.
Right, and of course, government has kickstarted the Jendela program, which is trying to expand the reach of the digitalization to not just central zones, but to the outskirt areas. And these are some of the initiatives that we're looking forward to being able to bring everybody and bridge that digital gap. Now, staying with you, Dr. Nur, we'll talk about these long-term structural changes, and this can come in the form of policy making, research, education. How will all these changes help the B40 community in the long run, and why are they important? Perhaps you can talk about this.
Okay, so the policies that the government is putting in now is targeting the growth, right? So what we need is to have an inclusive growth. That means we can have these long-term structural policies, but if these long-term structural policies exclude the participations from the B40 community, then they will remain where they are, stuck in the poverty trap. So one of the structural policies that you did mention, Elaine, is the Jendela program, National Digital Network, provisions of roughly about 700 million to continue with the digital connectivity in the rural areas and schools. But more importantly here, Elaine, as the government fiscal positions getting tighter and tighter, but more important issue here is to ensure that such proposal is implemented successfully and timely, so that these groups that we're targeting are not being left out even more. So far, when we refer to B40, we always associate with the cash transfers. But what we need now is the welfare system that is integral, inclusive, and comprehensive to create sustainable and the one that have the long-lasting impact. So inclusive growth is the answer here.
Right. Now, as we look forward out of this pandemic, what is your message to Malaysians, especially in this economic climate? And let's start with you, Datuk Vincent. What are your thoughts and what's your message?
Stay positive. Take care of yourself, because if you want to take care of the people surrounding you and the public, you have to take care of yourself. Stay safe. Follow all the SOPs. Not sure whether there will be a next wave or not, but actually we still have to be very cautious. Now, in terms of investment and property related, I think 2022 is really genuinely will be a very good big window of opportunity. Of course, moratorium is finishing, but everyone's funding and cash. Be certain of what is your investment. You're buying for own stay or you're buying for investment. Honestly, there are still a lot of people who are capable and are already planning and having the bullet and budget for investment. So stay true to what you know that you really, the reasons of buying. Is it buying for expansion of your business? And just go ahead, because the land price and the property prices are stable. Because one keynote that I want to share to everybody, the raw material prices, the material prices of all the construction of the property has increased tremendously, of an average of 25 to 75% year to year, the same month of last year, this year comparing. All right, so take note. Whatever you're going in, it's actually a good buy now for 2022.
Thank you, Datuk. Now, on to you, Dr. Nur. What is your outlook and what's your message to Malaysians as we come out, or we're pushing towards recovery?
Yes, not only staying positive, as what Datuk Seri mentioned just now, but also to take good care of your mental health, and then to reach out to others if you are, facing the problems. If you're not sure of what to do, to reach out to others as well. But this COVID gives us a chance to upskill ourselves, reskill ourselves, and seek out there the opportunities, either the one that is available online for free or reach out to the government initiatives. So I think it's upskilling and reskilling yourself to adapt with the new norm now that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Nur. In every challenge, there's always an opportunity. Thank you both, Datuk Seri Vincent as well as Dr. Nur Ain Shahrier, for sharing your thoughts today on the topic of Budget 2022 on the property and finance sector for the M40 and B40 group. Now, about 600,000 households from the middle income group, which is the M40, have fallen to the low-income group, or B40, due to this pandemic, and as reported by the Prime Minister's Department of Economic Affairs. Now, with these measures in place, the local industry is confident that the initiatives introduced in Budget 2022 will help spur the country's property market as well as accelerate the recovery of the economy. So thanks for staying with me till the end of the nation. Continue to maintain SOPs, keep each other safe as we open up travel and e-commute sectors. I'm Elaine. Bye for now.